What's up guys, Noor here and welcome to Book of Showtime Chapter 43. As always, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to like and share with your friends and drop a comment. That really helps with the algorithm. And if you have a topic you'd like me to cover for Book of Showtime, be sure to leave it in the comment section down below or anywhere you can reach me on social media or the Book of Showtime Discord. So guys, we have reached the end of the 2023 October selects. Did you guys enjoy your October? I hope you did. I finished Spider-Man 2 over the weekend. That was a beautiful game, and the fact that less than 48 hours from when this video goes live, I'll be playing Alan Wake 2. I mean, I've been waiting over 13 years to finish that story. Alan's gonna finish the story before Cody Rhodes. How about that? For today's final October Select chapter, I decided to cover not 3, not 4, but 6 video games. And we're going to begin this video by talking about the remake of Resident Evil 2. What, you thought you were going to get through this series without more Resident Evil? You were sadly mistaken. While personally not my favorite of the RE Engine era, I think that 2 and 3 remakes, they haven't aged well. Resident Evil 2 might be the most important one of all. Whenever I evaluate games years after they release, I feel that the impact a game can have is just as important as everything else. And when you look at games like Daymare 1994 and upcoming games like the aforementioned Alan Wake 2 and Alone in the Dark, you can see so much Resident Evil DNA from just the eye test. Don't get me wrong, this is by no means a bad thing. Resident Evil 2 is a great game despite some questionable design choices, and the original 1998 version is one of my all-time favorite games. Whenever you have other games and other companies trying to emulate your formula, you know you've done something right, and you also start to wonder how much the success of Resident Evil 2 led to these games getting made. When it comes to survival horror, Resident Evil is the series. It's one of the earliest pioneers of the genre and has constantly reinvented itself time and time again to fit the era. You can make the argument that some of the things that I'm saying can apply to Resident Evil 7 just as well. I mean, Resident Evil 7 was one of the first AAA titles that had a full-on VR version released at the same time, and it was essentially made to scale. Capcom loves being trendsetters, they love stepping out of their comfort zones, and I don't think we've seen anything like that outside of RE. I loved Resident Evil 2. I think the game did a great job of enhancing the original experience with a revamped Raccoon City Police Department. The lighting and sound design, fantastic. And while I think the way that they handled Mr. X was a little confusing as they knew Resident Evil 3 was coming a year later, I still loved playing this game. Since the release of Resident Evil 7 back in 2017, Resident Evil has had more levels of horror, and there's certainly a solid amount of tension in this game with the atmosphere they cooked up. Resident Evil 2, for me, gets a 9 out of 10. Next, here we have a non-horror horror game, Devil May Cry. Did you know Devil May Cry started as a Resident Evil? The original Resident Evil 4, and like many Resident Evils honestly, underwent many changes before release, with Devil May Cry spawning from some of the earlier concepts. I played Devil May Cry for the first time back in 2020, not really to play the game, but more to see the game, and you can see a lot of Resident Evil in this game. Now, that's not the main reason why I'm saying it's a non-horror horror game. You can tell just from the eye test when you look at the gothic aesthetic, the eerie locations, the tightness of the camera in some spots, and the twisted enemy designs. This was originally supposed to be something more haunting. Although the game may be a bit punishing for newer players, if you die enough, there is an easy mode, which that's exactly how I played the game. So if you're not up for the challenge, I recommend playing this game, even if you're a Resident Evil fan, just to ingest it. I'm not actually going to score this game, since when I played it I was on autopilot, had a movie on in the background and everything, but if you played Devil May Cry, let me know down below what you would give it. Next up, Dino Crisis. I promise you at some point there will be a non-Capcom game on this list, trust me. Dino Crisis might come off initially as just Resident Evil with dinosaurs, and to be honest, what's wrong with that? Also, we're talking a lot about Resident Evil so far in this video. But listen, because of the dinosaurs, there had to be a lot of differences from its spiritual predecessor. Zombies are slow, they're stupid, they're easy to fight. Dinosaurs, however, they're a lot faster and they're more intelligent, increasing the amount of tension and giving the game a level of panic that you didn't see in Resident Evil. This was offset by being able to move while aiming, something that wasn't even seen in Resident Evil for years. You also had continues and certain doors that you would save at as opposed to having a dedicated save spot. There were also times where some attacks would knock weapons out of your hands or cause you to bleed. While the series flamed out pretty fast, the original Dino Crisis was a great game, and its sequel did even more to shed the Resident Evil comparisons by focusing more on the action. With the original's elements of close quarters fighting, a hostile environment, and a dang-on T-Rex hunting you down, that's enough to land Dino Crisis on the October Selects. Now, if you're part of the Discord server, I've been trying to stream this game for like the last 2 weeks, and I hope to have it done before the year is up, so make sure to check it out. I've been wanting to replay this game for almost 4 years now. Today, Dino Crisis slashes an 8 out of 10. Moving on, Killing Floor 2. See, I told you guys, non-Capcom game, I promised. And at this point in October, you're also probably realizing how much I love zombie games. Hey man, you throw some shamblers in a game, I'm interested. I'm going to take a look. Throughout all the games we mentioned as part of the October selects, Killing Floor 2 might be the most zen. The game doesn't need deep lore or any wonky mechanics or big gimmicks. This is just a good old-fashioned zombie killing game. It's like the blue-collar zombie killing game. You can load in with up to 5 other friends and just blast zombies till the cows come home. It's a pure survival game, and there is some class-based gameplay, and there is a welding tool to help it stand out from its contemporaries and keep it a little unique at the same time. But otherwise, this is the everyman's zombie game. Killing Floor 2 doesn't try to take itself too seriously. There's plenty of humor, and all the characters have some personalities to them. Even the bosses have a lot of personality as well. All the maps are pretty solid too, and while I haven't played the game in a really long time, maybe like 4 years, I've seen that some maps have objectives now, which I think is awesome. Despite not playing the game in a long time, I always kept it installed just in case someone wanted to play. This is a game that I like to classify as an asset to have. Some multiplayer games, you might not be big on them, but they're fun and popular enough that, hey, if you can snag it, why not? You can really just sit and chill with your friends and just, talk shop while you're playing. It's very relaxing for as much as going on. There's not really much else to say, as Killing Floor 2 is very universally well received, and I just want to do my duty as spreading the good word of any zombies game I can. Killing Floor 2 gets a 7 out of 10. And ultimately, it's the remake of Dead Space. I almost wanted to lump the remake of Resident Evil 4 in with this entry, as they're both perfect remakes, but being as I finished Dead Space more recently, and I already talked about Resident Evil a ton so far, and Dead Space is coming to Game Pass, it deserves the spotlight on today's select. Back in Chapter 20, I explained that the goal of every remake should be this: preserve the legacy of the original while enhancing the experience for modern audiences without compromising the original game's feel, vision, and scope. And guess what? Dead Space hit every nail on the head. First off, the game looks fantastic. You guys know me, I'm a graphics last guy, but man, the Ishimura is so well designed and there's plenty of attention to detail. I actually found myself walking most of the game just to make sure I take it all in. And also because at any given point there can be a necromorph jumping out at you, something that wasn't even in the original game. The lore has been expanded with new hidden logs and side quests. Not to mention that Isaac has a voice this time around, and basically all the dialogue was rewritten to accommodate this. The game has new areas and security clearance rooms that offer more loot to make the game easier down the stretch, and none of it feels tacked on. The game doesn't feel bloated, the pacing is superb, and this might go down as one of the greatest remakes and one of the greatest horror games ever. Honestly, I could spend this whole chapter talking about what a masterclass effort in survival horror Dead Space is, but there's still one more game I need to talk about, so the Dead Space Glazed train ends here. The remake of Dead Space gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Finally, we end the 2023 October selects with one of my all-time favorite games, Dead Rising 2. Dead Rising was actually the franchise I had in mind when I came up with the concept for Chapter 4 sequel, remake, or reboot, because Dead Rising has been dormant for quite some time now. Now, Dead Rising 2 might not be scary, but you guys know me, I love my zombie games, and what's unique about Dead Rising is that, well, at least for me, it's a game that you don't just tend to beat your first time playing. I had to reset the story a couple of times, but since you keep your progress, it wasn't an issue. Dead Rising actually has enough content that you won't experience everything in one playthrough. I think personally, this is where Dead Rising peaked as a franchise. As compared to the first, Dead Rising improved on many of the concepts and mechanics while adding new features like combo weapons and multiplayer options. The game would even receive a standalone expansion called Off the Record, which starred the first game's protagonist Frank West. Off the Record would deliver even more enhancements and a new area, but the original Dead Rising 2, I just enjoyed that experience a lot more. It's more near and dear to my heart. I like Chuck Green a lot, I buy into his character, and I love his story. Now, its sequels, those were a bit of a mess, that's putting it gently, and it's funny that I talk about the sequel today because my friend Amy left this comment on last week's video saying, as huge of a Dead Rising fan as I am, I don't think I can ever play Dead Rising 3 again. Despite being very high budget, it's such a poorly designed game in a lot of regards. Now, Dead Rising 3 wasn't a bad game, but it was a horrible Dead Rising. Many of the things that made it special were stripped away or simplified, and one thing that can sink a series, which you can see what happened to Dead Rising and started here, one thing that can sink a series is trying to make the game more accessible to get new players. This ends up alienating the players who were there for you from the jump, who brought into why this series was special to begin with. Imagine if they put out Dark Souls 4 and it had checkpoints, you didn't lose souls when you died, you can pause the game, and there weren't any invasions. All these things make the game really hard, yes, but it's also why Dark Souls is Dark Souls. Everything was made too easy in Dead Rising 3, too convenient. You had 7 days instead of 3. You can make combo weapons and save wherever and whenever. The psychopaths there weren't as many psychopaths, and they also weren't as memorable either. And the survivor system was kind of overhauled and basically removed. The survivors, you didn't really have to rescue them. While on paper, combo vehicles were a cool idea, there's barely enough clear road to drive them on for more than 5 seconds. And Dead Rising 4? Let's not even talk about that one. Each of these consecutive poor outings just made Dead Rising 2 stand out more as the best in the series. Now, I know this part of the video is just really to be talking about Dead Rising 2, but listen, I've been wanting to talk about Dead Rising for a long time, okay? I really love this series. Dead Rising and Dead Rising 2, they had a lot of natural difficulty. The game was designed to be a challenge, and if you got stuck, that's okay. Just reset the story and try again. You'll come back better than before, and that was fine. I was a kid when I first played these games, and I had no issues resetting. Not me today, though. I could probably go from level 1 to level 40 in one playthrough, but that's just because I know all the tricks and the little things. I loved the heck out of this game. I even had that big Prima guide. You guys remember Prima guides? I had that. I might still have it. I always keep Dead Rising 2 installed on my Xbox, and I even have the Zombrex Edition Steelbook sitting in my game case. Dead Rising 2 has always been near and dear to my heart, and today I'm giving it a 9.5 out of 10. Alright guys, that does it for the October selects. This has been a fun mini-series, and I hope you guys give some of these games a try. Let me know down below what games you've played for October. Next week we'll be back to regular content. Inshallah, I will see you in the next chapter.